All right. Hello, everybody. And we are here for some much needed videos that need to be done. I do apologize about the small wait. It was uncontrollable to have to deal with waiting. Was not something in my control to do. So let's go ahead and begin. When brings you Yahweh, your God, okay? Singular, plural, into the land that you are going in. Remembering that Yahweh applies to Son, Father, and Holy Spirit, not just Father. Going in there to possess, and he has cast out many nations before you. The different nations that he's going to list next, which are Hittite, and Girgashite, and Amorite, and Canaanites, and Perizzites, and Hivites, and Jebusites. 7 nations greater, that would likely be greater in number, and mightier, also probably in number, than you. Although greater and mightier also may have context of like how far advanced they are in technology. Um, Although back then it might have just been like arrows and spears and swords and things like that. But maybe they had better weapons and better uh, tools or anything like that. We don't know exactly in what way they were mightier or greater. But he says there are 7 nations, which he just listed. And, yep, 7 nations that are mightier than you, and delivers them, Yahweh, your God, over to you. So even though they're mighty, they're able to defeat you easily. Our Lord God can turn the tables of war and make them become defeated by you. So the way I want you to hear this is like this. Man can have way more numbers against other group of men, right? So let's say we have 5,000 versus 1,000, right? Obviously, 5,000 would beat 1,000 in a normal battle. But when you got God on your side, that makes your number become infinite. Okay? Sorry. Notice also, notice also the one who delivers them. It isn't anything that the humans can do to win. It is Yahweh, our God, singular and plural both, who will deliver them over to you. Okay? And then you shall strike them down, devoting, you must devote to destruction them, right? So you must destroy them. Not you shall make with them a covenant, and not you shall show mercy. Okay? Now likely these are groups of nations that are not being obedient to God, which is why God's going, I'm going to destroy you. And although destroy might be in the context of like get rid of every single one of them, we don't know if that's the case here. But let's read on. And not shall you join in marriage. So that was one of the main things that is in the Old Testament. With them, your daughters, not you shall give to their sons, and not their daughters you shall take for your sons. So do not intermingle bloodlines. Back then, intermingling a bloodline back then was like polluting something. It was like contaminating, right? I guess a way of saying that would be like if you were today and you were black and you were going, I see a person who's mixed black and white, and I'm going, I'm pure black. You're not pure black, right? It would be that kind of viewpoint. You would look down on them, judge them, ostracize them, right? Things like that. but also this would be like polluting your covenant, I guess you could also say. But let's keep reading. For they will turn. Now, here's the reason why. Okay, he'll give the reason why next, I believe. For they will turn away your sons from following me. There's the reason why they're being destroyed. And there's also likely the reason why he's saying don't marry them. Because if you're marrying with them, you might run after other gods. For they will turn away your sons from following me. Why? Because mankind has free will. And they will serve other gods. Yes, that is the word Elohim. That is lowercase gods, as in reference to something that's not a god. And the thing I want to say with that is this. Elohim by itself is not proof of a god. It's just proof of something being served as a god. Okay. But when you see Elohim being joined with Yahweh, that makes a huge difference. Okay. Elohim is not God all by itself. It's what it joins with that makes it God. Remember, Elohim is the word God, and it just means a title of what he is. Okay. Or what that thing is, right? When you have Elohim joined with Yahweh, for example, Elohim would speak about what Yahweh is. And Yahweh would be the name of the God that we serve. You could also say Jehovah, because that would also be a translation of that same name. Okay. So I hope you get the idea. That's why you see here Elohim being separated from Yahweh, Elohim being a different God, not an actual God, because we know in Scripture it says there are no other gods but me, right? This would be the context of something that you serve as if it was a god, like money, for example. Money is not actually a god. It's not supreme in power. It doesn't even think, right? But you can still serve it as though it's a god. Just like the golden calf in with the Israelites in the desert. Okay, and it says, don't take these women and be joined with them, or don't join with them in marriage in any way, because of the fact that they will turn your hearts away from me and they will serve other gods. And because of that serving other gods, what will happen? And will be kindled, relit, the anger of Yahweh against you, and he will destroy you swiftly. So in other words, please don't join yourself with these people who serve other gods, because when you join yourself with something unfruitful, it is most adamantly, probably 99.9% good chance that you're going to end up bringing God's wrath upon yourself. So let me put it this way. If in the Bible says bad company corrupts good character, right? So if you start off being good character and you hang around with bad company, what ends up happening to your character? It starts becoming bad because you start associating yourself with the same things that these people are doing. You become partakers in what they're doing. Okay. And there might be a whole slew of ways that I could bring trouble upon you. For example, we know if I have a person who is in my car and that person has killed somebody and I'm with them, I'm guilty by association, even though I haven't done the killing myself, because I've unknowingly become a participant in that murder. Okay. So that would be like guilty by association, but this would be more of like guilt by taking part in it. So like if you hang out around with a person who drinks and you know God has convicted you not to drink for whatever reason, like he has me, you hanging around with people that are drinking, you know eventually it's going to rub off on you and you're going to partake in that drinking. And if I believe that drinking is wrong for me to do and I do it, now I fall into hamartia, which is specifically the one where you are doing what you know to be wrong. Okay. Because that word has two parts to it. It includes doing exactly what you know to be wrong, as well as you trying your hardest not to do wrong, but you fail, right? So failing, that also applies to it. Okay. but Yahweh's anger will burn against you and he will destroy you swiftly, quickly, in other words. But rather, thus you shall deal with them. So, in other words, don't do this instead. So he gives them a replacement, an answer as to what to do. Okay. Okay. So, but rather, thus you shall deal with them, their altars, right? So this is specifically how you deal with their altars, right? So that's what it's talking about. How you shall deal with them, their altars. So them and their altars. You shall break down their pillars. You shall smash their Asher poles. And this is one of the verses dealing with my home that I told you guys about before. And if I don't have it, I got to write it down. Okay. I didn't write, I don't have it on the specific paper that I'm making, but it is Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 5. 7 verse 5. So I just added that to the list because this is one that I came across before. So listen to what it says. When you come across people that are not joined serving the same gods as you, what do? You destroy their altars, right? And you break down their pillars, things that they erect to their gods, and you smash their Asher poles. You shall cut down their carved images, and you shall burn with fire the carved images. Okay. Now you might be wondering, okay, Kevin, how has verse 5 come into contact with you? Well, I started looking at the words. What is an altar? An altar is something devoted to something you serve, right? So what would their altars be? Their altars would be I guess you could say, what they choose to serve in their life would be their altars. So like, if running after money is their god, right? Then the service of running after money, such as finding a good job, to make a lot of money, selling drugs, or whatever else, that would be an altar, a method by which they would offer up their things to what they serve. The pillars and the Asher poles, that basically represents tools that are used in that service. So if we're talking about drugs, tools that would be used in that service is the drugs themselves. It would also be the tools used to make the drugs, anything like that, or any sort of methods along that lines. But you get the general context. So when I started looking at what are some figurative altars that are erected in my life that I'm associating with, I started going, oh yeah. Like, for example, although most people would say a little statue of a Santa Claus might not be an altar. Well, let's examine it and find out. What is a little statue Santa Claus, right? It's an image devoted to something that is fictitious, not real, okay? And it has been turned into an idol, right? Because that's what the Santa Claus of today is. He's an idol, right? He's a replacement, if you will, for our attention. The original Santa Claus is St. Nicholas. He was a Christian, right? So have you noticed that the image of Santa Claus is not a skinny man, a skinny old man that is having a cross on him, right? And running around doing good deeds for people. He's a jolly old man that has magical powers. So as you see, they have taken the image of Santa Claus, the real Santa Claus, which is just a Christian doing his job, and turned it into an idol. And they've done that with Saint Nicholas, Saint Patrick, and Saint Valentine as well, right? In different ways. So when I started looking around my home and started going, what is this thing devoted to? What is this decoration devoted to? What is this devoted to? And not just with that, but like, what are my movies devoted to, right? What are they pointing to? Is the way I looked at it. I go, what is this knickknack pointing to? Is it pointing to God, or is it pointing to something other than God as a replacement for my attention? And I did the same thing with my movies, and I did the same thing with my music, okay? And my clothing as well was another one. So this was one of the tools used by God for me to offer up a free will offering to God, which would be that free will offering would be get away from secular things. Okay, and look what it says: break them down, smash them, cut them down, burn them. Right. So utterly destroy them. For me, it was throw them in the trash, and I threw a lot of decorations out. Um, I didn't really get rid of them as far as like give them to other people, but the movies I gave to other people because there's a lot of people here that still, at that in their, I guess you could say, in their area of life are still lost, and I don't want to keep them lost, but like let me give you an example. In the movie Wonder Woman, there's a scene where she's talking with Ares, the god of war, and she's talking about the potential of humanity. That yes, even though humanity has a lot of evil in it, there's still a whole lot of good. And years ago, um, I made some videos about that, and um, I used it to point to the fact that even in certain movies, if you pay close enough attention, have a godly spirit, you can still see moments where movies say something or do something that is reminiscent of what Christ has done or what Christ feels about us. Um, so my point being that maybe in a secular movie there might be something there that would drive someone to God. Now, is it the best tool to be used to drive someone to God or to encourage them to God? Obviously not, but you get the idea. Um, Hopefully that makes sense to you. Um, with that being said, let's move on to verse 6. So, verse 6 says, for a people holy you are. So, the reason you're not to mix yourself with all this stuff is because you are a people that is set aside, set differently. You're supposed to be different, set apart, sacred. Okay? Which is why the word here is Kodesh, or Kadush, as some would say. Okay? Which means holy, but doesn't mean perfect. It simply means sacred or set aside. You're supposed to be different than these other people who serve things that are not God. Right? So the way you want to hear that is the world runs after everything else that doesn't point to God. It loves to do that. So the question for you is, are you being the salt? Are you being that which is set differently? Are you living differently, thinking differently, acting differently than the world? If so, then you're in good standing. If not, then you might need to get with God and consult with God as to why. Verse 6, for a holy people you are to Yahweh. Like you're dedicated to Yahweh, your God. Singular and plural. And the parts here is singular right there, plural right there, with the P. So it's Yahweh Elohika. Okay, you are a holy people dedicated to this one God who is triune. Has decided Yahweh your God. So Yahweh our God is the one that has decided, not us, to be for himself a people, a special treasure above all the peoples. So in other words, Yahweh our God, he's the one that has chosen to make us a special treasured people. Now this would be Old Testament, so this would be talking about Israel. So keep that in mind, okay? Above all the peoples on that are on the face of the earth. So you are very special. So think of it like Levites versus the rest of the Israelites. Levites are set aside as a distinguished people that are specifically set for the role of serving in the temple, and they have special privileges given only to them. You could probably also put the chief priests and the high priest in that category as well as a way, but another way you could hear it is like this. Let's say the world comes out and says all white people have way more privileges. So I'm going to go to a time in history, for an example, that a lot of black people aren't going to like. Okay, so you're going to have to bear with me. Years ago, we had slavery, right? And there were things that white people could do that black people could not. Black people could not go into certain restaurants. They could not sit in certain seats. They could not do this. They could not do that, right? And I'm using that as an example to show you that there was special treatment and special privileges given, and the people that were white at that time were looked at as a more special treasure than the black people. In the same way as that, even though as horrible as that time was, which I definitely do not agree with at all, because everyone has equal worth, using that as an example to show you that the people that are set aside as holy people by Yahweh, they have a special treatment that others don't have access to. So, for example, they can talk to the one true God who answers prayers. The other ones, they have these God statues that they pray to, but those statues don't answer their prayers. They don't talk to them. They don't lead them, right? So you see the difference. Our God gives us peace and joy and happiness and guidance and love. Their little God statues don't, right? So you can see how there's a distinguishment going on, okay? And he sets his people as a special treasure to him over all the other peoples of the face of the earth. And it says, not because you were more numerous. So he gives them a direct reason. It's not because you were more in number than any of the peoples. That's not why Yahweh set his love on you. Now, I love how it says it. Yahweh did set his love on you. He directed his love to you, poured out his love on you, and chose you, for you were the least of all the people. So notice that. Yahweh takes something that is low and makes it something that is great. So that points my mind immediately to the fact that in this world, we have people who want to make themselves great, but the question is, are you great in God's eyes? Because great in the world does not equal great in God's eyes. Unless you're talking about the God, the fake God, the devil, which is how a lot of this world is tricked. But it is from the love of Yahweh for you, and from his keeping of his oath. He's an oath keeper. He keeps his word. That he swore to your fathers, that would be ancestors there, that has brought out Yahweh with you with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of King Pharaoh of Egypt. Talking about Moses being used as a tool, but Yahweh being the one that brought the ancestors out of Egypt. Okay, so that's what we're talking about when it says King of Egypt. When it says King Pharaoh of Egypt, it's referring to Moses and Pharaoh. And you shall know, right? You shall remember that Yahweh your God is God. Yahweh your God, he is God. Right? So it says he, plural. Singular. Even though God is plural and Yahweh is singular, the same principle as Genesis 1:26 to 1:28, where it goes, let us make man in our image, and it switches to his and him. Okay. The God faithful. Now it's talking about what kind of qualities God has. Keeping in mind, God is just the title. So what kind of qualities this God, this deity, would have? Keeping the covenant of loving devotion for those loving him, and keeping his commandments for 1,000 generations and he repays those who hate him, right? So he keeps his commandments, he keeps his covenants, what he establishes with people for thousands of generations. And by the way, 1,000 generations would be, if we're looking at a generation being 100 years, that would be 1,000 years. And he repays those who hate him to their faces. He doesn't mince words. He doesn't pretend to pretend to love you to your face, but then hate you behind your back. God is not a double-minded person, a double-standard person. And he repays those who hate him to their faces. To destroy them, not he delays, right? So when it says he hates them to their face, he's honest with you. If he doesn't like something you're doing, he will tell you right to your face. He is bold and brave that way. And he does not delay in destroying them who hate him, to those who hate him. So the question would be, according to Scripture, how do you hate someone in the Old Testament? How does someone show that they hate the Lord? Well, it's going to tell us. To his face he will repay him, and shall keep the commandment. So that next statement about keeping the commandment, that's how we know. Because in the New Testament it says, those who love me keep my commandments, right? Now, what that verse doesn't say is, it doesn't say those who love me are saved. It says those who love me keep my commandments. Okay? This talks about how you show your love to your God. Okay? In the same way that a obedient child would be expressing his true love for his parent when he obeys what they say to do, even if he disagrees with it. Okay? So that's how we know someone who hates him. They don't like him. They don't want to listen to him. They don't want to do anything he says. They don't want to obey him in any way, shape, or form. So those people he destroys right to their faces. And this would, in our world today, this would have the context of, because of your choices, God lets you go through tons of suffering to get you eyes to open. That, hey, you made the choice, you got to live with the consequences. It would also be not only like that aspect of like what you sow, you reap, but it would also be that because you're not going to listen to me, you're going to pay the consequence. So also same principle. And because of this, I'm also going to bring you into places where you're not going to have any kind of authority for the most part, in the same way as he brought the Israelites under the rule of Egypt. He brought the Israelites under the rule of the Romans, which led up to Jesus' time, as well as I'm pretty sure quite a few other ones that I don't remember the names of. But he says, you shall keep the commandment and the statutes and the ordinances. So these are just the different sets of rules, because the statutes and the ordinances are basically the same thing, the laws, that I commanded you today to do them. And it shall come to pass, because you listen, right there, you listen to the ordinances, these, and keep and do them, that will keep Yahweh, your God, with you, the covenant, right? So the covenant in the Old Testament was directly connected to keeping the ordinances. So think of it like, in the new covenant, your relationship with God is not based on how well you obey him. Okay, it's based on what he has done. In the Old Testament, it was completely work-based. It was completely based on what you did. Now, all of us at some point have come across people that says salvation is not work-based today, right? And that would actually be accurate. Although salvation would incorporate your actions for sure, right? We know that just by reading scripture, right? You are saved by grace, but we also know any tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire, as well as other verses those who love me will keep my commands, which shows love. Um, so it's like exercising your muscles. There's a lot of aspects of works being involved in your faith. That's why it says faith without works is dead, right? You can't have one without the other. You have to have them both. Okay. But in the Old Testament, it was completely work based. Okay. Yes, your faith mattered still, but you're being established in God keeping that covenant with you, right? That you were under, and this would be the covenant of the law, okay? To be, well, so if I wanted to explain to you what the covenant of the law was, I would probably say the covenant of the law was the method by which you were established as one of God's people. And in doing that, you would have that access to Him through prayer and through a relationship with Him as well as His guidance. Okay. And it was solely based through how well you obeyed the laws, the Mosaic laws. Okay. And you shall keep Yahweh your God with you, the covenant. So He will keep His promises to you. And the loving devotion that He swore to your ancestors or fathers, as it were. And He has loved you and blessed you and multiplied you. So because you chose to listen to Him, He wants good for you. He wants to not only bless you, bless your life, He wants to multiply you, which give you lots of children, and He has blessed the fruit of your womb. So He has blessed your children as well. And the fruit of your land, which would be all the lands that you acquire, your grain and your wine and your oil and your incense and your cattle and your offspring of your flock in the land that He swore to your fathers to give to you, right? Specifically the land flowing with milk and honey, okay? And you notice the blessings cover a whole bunch of different stuff, okay? Verse 14, blessed you shall be above all the peoples. So you shall be more blessed than any other people on the planet. Not there shall be among you a barren man or a barren woman. This would be a person that's not able to have kids. Or among your livestock even your livestock will be able to multiply rapidly with lots of kids. And has taken away, listen to what, has taken away Yahweh from you all the sickness and all the diseases of Egypt, the terrible that you have known. So you're not going to be you're not going to have a lot of diseases and a lot of sicknesses going on in your people, keeping in mind that all of this blessing and stuff and all of these promises are related to how well they keep the Mosaic law. Okay. Terrible, and you have known, not does He put on you. So he disconnects it from you. Okay, and He goes, no, you're listening to me, so you're going to have fruitful things come upon you, not negative things. Think about it in the same way as a parent who sees a child being obedient is going to make sure that that child doesn't have any sort of disciplining or consequences that they will really have to deal with much at all, especially consequences. Okay, so when you see right here where it says Yahweh has taken away, think of it like Yahweh has made sure that the Israelites don't have to deal with consequences because they're not doing actions, they're not sowing actions that would then bring about the diseases and sicknesses, right? Because if you remember, the diseases and sicknesses of Egypt were related to the disobedience of Egypt, okay? And that you have known, not He does put on you, and He has put them on all those hating Him. So He has transferred these diseases and sicknesses. They're not placed on the Israelites at all. They're placed on everyone else who chooses to hate the Israelites. Okay? And you shall destroy all the peoples whom Yahweh your God will deliver over to you. Okay, you shall destroy them. Not you shall have pity, your eye on them. So you shall not pity them, and not you shall serve their gods. Right? So you shall not take part in the garbage that they take part in. For a snare it is to you, if you should say in your heart, are greater the nations. So if you should say in your emotions, when you look at the nations that God brings to you because of their disobedience, if you're to doubt, right, because of the number, if you are to say in your heart, are greater the nations these than I, how can I dispossess them or conquer them, would be the word for that. Then you're showing doubt. So what happens at that point? Not you shall be afraid of them, right? So don't be afraid of them. You must remember what Yahweh did to Pharaoh. Yahweh your God did to Pharaoh. Now notice that. Who did it to Pharaoh? Our God, who is singular and plural both. The Trinity did this to Pharaoh and to all Egypt. The trials great that saw your eyes. So the different things, the different plagues that fell on Egypt that your eyes saw, and the signs and wonders, and the mighty hand and the arm outstretched. That would be the method by which it happened, which a lot of times would be Christ. But I want you, because a good example is Genesis 19:24. Okay, you have Yahweh on the earth pouring out fire and brimstone from Yahweh out of heaven. Right? The Yahweh on earth would be Jesus Christ. Okay? This was prior to the incarnation of Jesus Christ, by which brought you out Yahweh your God. So shall do Yahweh your God to all the peoples in that same way. So when it says shall do, it means in the same way as Egypt got decimated, the peoples who you fight against, who hate you, who hate the Israelites, who stand against Yahweh, those people are going to be demolished to all the peoples of whom you are afraid before their faces. So although you might be afraid of them, you're not to listen to that fear. You're not to let that fear stop you. It would be the same principle as, oh, I'm afraid to go into battle, but I know going into battle is the right thing to do. So I'm not going to be afraid to go into battle. I'm going to go into battle for sure. Okay. Moreover, the hornet will send Yahweh, your God, among them until have perished those who are left. So God's going to actually send bees, specifically hornets, among them to kill a lot of them, those who are left and who are hiding. So because you're afraid of their numbers, but if you trust in Yahweh, Yahweh will actually lower their numbers so that you will see that they're not as formidable as they think they are. This would be like God humbling someone in their spirit that you come across. He's going to humble them in your presence and you're going to see it. So as that way you know that God has delivered them over to you. Now, luckily today we don't have this context of really destroying people, because the New Testament doesn't talk about that. It talks about loving people. But the way I want you to hear that part, as far as like people that stand against you, is that Bible says those who exalt themselves will be humbled, right? So maybe today someone stands against you, right? And stands against God. And it stands against what God stands for. Later on, that person is going to be humbled. So now they're going to be brought across your path where they are actually going to need your help. And God is going to strip away their pride and arrogance, which is something that got in the way of when they dealt with you the first time around, right? So God directly brings them into a place where now they're stripped of their pride and arrogance. because of their suffering. Okay, so now they're like, yeah, sure, now, yeah, I definitely need God now, right? They're brought to their knees would be the way that would be, and because they're brought to your knees, now God's going to bring you guys across your path again, so that you can actually help them this time. But first, He had to take them to a place where He had to strip away their arrogance and pride. Okay, until they have perished those among left and who will hide themselves from you. Not you shall be terrified of them, for Yahweh your God is among you, right? He's with you. He is a God, great and awesome, right? He is a God that's great and awesome. We know that. And has cast out Yahweh your God, the nations, these before you, little by little. He's destroyed their pride, destroyed their arrogance, destroyed their self-exaltation, little by little. Not you are able to destroy them at once, least because too numerous for you the beasts of the field, right? So God is the one that breaks them down little by little, chipping away at their armor, and will deliver them, Yahweh your God, over to you. And he will do what? He will confuse them with confusion great until they are destroyed. So remember the context. This is not God going, I'm going to confuse everyone. No. I'm going to confuse those who hate me. I'm going to confuse those who don't love me. And because they don't love me and hate me and don't want to listen to me, I'm going to confuse them with confusion great until they are destroyed. Okay. Now that might seem a little harsh, but think of it like the prodigal son, right? The dad hands over his inheritance to that son. That son goes away with the inheritance, thinking everything's going to be wonderful from that day forth. And imagine the confusion of the child when he realizes what's happened to my life. The money is gone, and now I'm so confused, and now I don't know what to do. Right? Your own choices are what is going to lead to your confusion, because you're going to be like, I've made these choices in life, but those choices fall apart and break apart on me. My plans fall apart. They don't happen the way I want them to. And as hard as I might try to do this and this and this and this, it doesn't work. Okay. And he will deliver their kings, right? So their authority figures, into your hand and will destroy their name from under the heavens, right? The arrogance and the pride of their name, right? The self-exaltation. Not shall be a stand man against you until you have destroyed them. Okay. So yet again, hear it like this. Those who oppose you because you follow God, God is going to bring them down, humble them. Okay. Now, one of the ways that this might work is, let's say they don't listen to God. Well, now they have to deal with the choices of not listening to God. So instead of avoiding stealing, they chose to steal something. And because they stole something, now they're in this place where, because they have stolen something, now they got to deal with the consequences of stealing something, which would be go to jail. Right? Same as if they murdered somebody. Whereas you, being one that would listen to God, you haven't killed someone, you haven't stolen because you're listening to God. Therefore, you're being kept from the dangers that the others are facing. Right? And that's one of the methods by which God will destroy them, is through the consequences of their own actions. Right? And he not shall stand a man against you until you have destroyed them. Then it says, the carved images of their gods you shall burn. So here's another one, 725 in the same book. That's another one of the verses dealing with my house that I got to write down. I wrote it down before, but I want it on this particular piece of paper. This is one of the other ones that I mentioned. It says, the carved images of their gods you shall burn with fire, not you shall covet. That's an important word here. The silver or the gold that is on them, and not you shall take it for yourselves, lest you be ensnared by it. For it is an abomination to Yahweh your God, singular and plural. The way that I saw this when I looked at it with the eyes of my life was, hey, Kevin, you got images on your wall, you got images around your house that are devoted to other gods. You need to destroy them and get rid of them. And then the part about the coveting is, he said, Kevin, why do you always want to collect these things? What reason are you coveting these things of the world? What reason are you wanting these things of the world for yourself? And he did this in numerous ways, but one of the most clearest ways he did it was to say to me, Kevin, you have wanted for many years this wonderful, large, amazing Christmas. If you could just get that Christmas, you could be happy, was the idea you had, Kevin. So let me ask you a question, Kevin. Why are you coveting the things that the world wants? Because the world is the one that wants, if I could just have this wonderful holiday, I'll be happy. If I can just have this, if I can just have that, I'll be happy. And that is coveting at its deepest heart. I want something to replace my God. And when I looked at Christmas, I said, wait a minute. Here I'm running after this desire to have Christmas be the thing that brings me joy, when in reality, it should be God who brings me joy, not the holiday, not having this holiday happen this specific way. Okay. And then I looked on further at in this one, and it says, do not take it for yourself. Do not take these things that you are coveting and wanting for yourself. Otherwise, you will be ensnared, right? You will be trapped by them. You will be trapped by their deceivement. You will be trapped by their trickery. So when I saw that, I go, oh, yeah. And it made perfect sense. I'm like, wow, God, for many years, I went to the stores and bought Christmas decorations and did all of these things with Christmas money. And then I'm like, okay, what's going on? How come I've wasted all that money running after something that was just something I was coveting? Why? It's an abomination to God. And abomination means something that is disgusting. It's like ugh, nasty. Right? Think of it like vomit. Right? It's something that makes God want to vomit. Okay? If you want to put it that way. Yahweh your God, singular and plural, it is to him. And not shall you bring in abomination into your house. That was another part of it. So not just 25, but 26 as well. Okay. That said, not you shall bring into your house an abomination. So if these images, if these things that I'm coveting, if I'm bringing them into my house and they are abomination because they're devoted to other gods or other, I guess you could say, other pursuits, other things. If I'm bringing it to my house, what does the verse say? You shall not bring an abomination into your house and become set apart for destruction. Oh. So if I bring these abominations into my house, these things that are devoted to other gods, other things, into my home, which would be my sanctuary, which would be that house where I dwell, because that's what a house is, where you happen to dwell. Okay. Well, what happened? My house as well as me, shall become set apart for destruction, like it. Detesting, you shall detest it. So instead of doing it, You shall do what? You shall detest it, right? Which is think it's disgusting, hate it. And abhor, you shall abhor it, for it is devoted to destruction. So if I'm breaking down that last piece for you before we end this live video, before we end this video, I would say it like this. When I realized that, okay, these miniature figurative altars, which are devoted to things that are not of God, and simply taking my time and taking my money and taking my devotion and taking my energy, these things I'm bringing into my house, I'm making my house as well as my life set apart for destruction. So I need to get rid of these things, and I need to learn to detest and abhor. And yeah, that would be the essence of like, you shall detest it. You shall learn to detest it. You shall learn to abhor it, right? This is not something that you naturally have. It's not like, oh, lust is something sexy and hot that I love. And then the next day you go, oh, I abhor it. I hate it, right? No. God teaches you over time the fruitfulness of running after it. And you shall hate it and detest it. Why? Because it is what it's devoted to. That's a key word right there. What is it devoted to? What is it aimed at? Okay? What is it aiming at? What is it devoted to? And ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of this video, Deuteronomy chapter 7. Thank you for being here. I will be recording throughout the day a whole slew of videos that need to be uploaded. So stay tuned for the next one. Thank you for your time. Love you guys and be blessed.